Welcome back to Foiling Week 2022 and the Foiling Week Forum. We've had a really busy day that started out with the announcement of the Foiling Youth World Series. And I really think that with an event like that, that includes youth racing, but it's not just racing. It's like there's this component to go around the world in partnership with a bunch of other nations with World Sailing to have an event like that where they race different boats, they get provided different boats and get this access. But the other important thing is it's almost like going to be a mini foiling week where you get to meet designers, engineers, and students like we have here and in the Sumac Challenge to exchange ideas and realize that just getting excited about foiling opens the doors for a lot of other things. So without further ado, we're going to get into the eFoil influencers side of things. And, you know, there's a lot of influencers involved with Foiling Week. But one thing we talked about earlier today was push technology, meaning if you see ideas in efficiencies, batteries, hydrofoils, you see an opening in the market for transportation or even racing sailboats, you want to grab these technologies that you're aware of and push them into those areas. And instead of industries asking you for solutions, you have solutions and you're finding a place for them. So without further ado, again, we have Luke Blesha from Zest. Thank you, Luke, for showing up. We appreciate it. We have Robin Amisher with the Swiss Solar Boat. And also along with Robin, we have a student. Like a lot of the students here, we have Juliette Pellissier, who is part of the Swiss Solar Boat, but she's part of the Swiss Solar Boat Association. So she, am I right, Juliette, that you're the president of that association?
Yeah, exactly.
Great. And we're lucky, we have Godard Van Hardenbroek from Eldorado, yes, which is an awesome, like a e-boat project. And the boat is so beautiful. And we get to see all these different variations on the theme, which is efficient craft. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Cool. So we're going to get started. What we want to try to figure out right now is, you know, the Swiss Solar Boat Challenge has Solar Boat in it, and there's a particular challenge that Juliette's working on. Luke Blesha from Zest will explain to us what his project is all about. And we also have Eldorado. So what we want to do is maybe we're going to start with Luke and then move our way around the circle. Luke is doing kind of either foiling boats, electric boats, high efficiency boats, working on these kind of big idea projects. Is that being driven? Is there a demand in the market for these things, or is it something that you've seen these ideas and the capabilities in these technologies and you want to push this product into the market?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, actually. It's a mix of the two, because in a way, this is all driven by climate change. So all this reflection of having something more efficient, something green, something transport people to lower the distances and to transport them comfortably, like in normal transport, I would say. This is new, so in a kind of way it's a push right now, but it will very soon become a pull, because we need this, and we invest now for boats that will last for the next 30 years, and investment made today will arrive in 2050 when we need to be zero. So today we still emit 50 gigatons of CO2 a year, and we need to go to zero in 28 years. So we better get started right now. And it's a huge challenge. And mobility is about 1/3 of this emission. So working on mobility, giving new ideas, new technology, which is not new, but is the combination of all this technology, which is new, to make something more efficient, green. That's a push that's coming in pool very soon.
Awesome. And tell me about Zest.
So yeah, Zest is a zero emission speed shuttle. So you can see here on the background the small size vessel that is a 10 meters, 35 feet. It's the demonstrator, so it's a fully electric, hydrogen-powered. Well, it's hybrid hydrogen and batteries to make them work in a good, good symbiosis. And it's for transport of people. So the first one is a more water taxi, individual tender boat. And we have another one that will come in 2025-26 for transport of 100 persons. And bigger will come probably later. So it's very comfortable because it's a foiler, as you know. It's like flying on a carpet. It's 85% energy efficiency in comparison with traditional fast boats, and these it's
How far along are you with the demonstrator?
Sorry, say again?
How far along are you with the demonstrator?
So all the studies are done now. We start putting together parts, and it will be on the water next year. And
Okay.
we work quite close with Swiss Solar Boat, where they have a very nice boat, very challenging because it's asymmetrical, but they will talk a bit more. And on this boat, we test some software also with them.
Awesome. It's so interesting that even into the MobiFly that we talked to Anders Bringdahl about earlier, there's so much overlap in what everyone's working on, and it's all happening at the same time. It's just what stage everyone is in. And so let's move on to Godard.
Yeah, hi. Nice, Chris.
Tell me about Eldorado. I mean, I know this is a luxury boat, really, but just tell me the genesis of the project quickly, and then also specifically, the application that you've given.
Yeah, so my business partner and I, when we met, he was interested in doing a fast powerboat, and I was working a lot on electric racing, actually. So, well, there's a long story there, but basically, I'm a bit of a speed freak. I've always been. I've loved speed, but I'm really quite convinced that we should, as Luke has been mentioning, we should transition rapidly to zero emission lifestyles. But I think personally, I'm quite convinced that we shouldn't abandon this human desire for spectacle. I mean, if you go out here in Foiling Week, it's about racing, right? I mean, sailing has been around for a long time, obviously, but this urge, the need for speed is quite deeply ingrained, I think. And if you can realize that through zero emissions, then we really have something, right? Because it captures the imagination, it captures people's hearts. And that's where it starts. I believe it starts with the heart. And so when my partner said, well, if I want to do this boat, if you do it, we do it together, we could do an electric boat. So we started looking into that. And then when you start doing the calculations, as all of you here already know, of course, then the planing hull is just disaster when it comes to energy consumption, especially if you want to go fast, because it just goes up to the square, right? So it's not going to happen, and so that's we very early on in the project switched to make a hydrofoil or electric boat, and right now we have an 8-meter prototype that is flying beautifully in the Netherlands, and so there's lots of steps, of course, to take before you get there. And right now we're building our first, the first version of the Eldorado 8S launch edition. So this is going to be the first consumer version of our boat. And we decided to come to Foiling Week too, because we want to be we've been a bit stealthy, and but we want to be part of this community and contribute to this community. And yeah, we think really it's really starting to take off, and it's exciting time actually.
Absolutely. And, talking about going through those same design challenges, Juliette and Robin, we'd love to hear about the Swiss Solar Boat project. And, Juliette, I'm assuming you're pretty young, at a very young age, you're tackling probably all the same design issues that Gutter and Luke are facing. So tell us a little bit about the Swiss Solar Boat and where both of you fit into that project.
Yeah, so the Swiss Solar Boat is student impulsion. We try to build a boat that is solar powered. So we decided with Robin to go for asymmetrical design to tackle interesting issues for research, to go with EPFL. And yeah,
one of the things that's very special about this project is that our main goal is not the boat itself, it's education. So we want to teach and to have the young engineers of tomorrow aware of those problematics. It's like a talent pool for later. So that's a call to the industrials right here. But yeah, we have more and more students going directly to industry, to partners, because they have the skills. And that's the first goal of the project. And on the side, we clearly want to have a very special boat that's efficient, that's interesting. And having an asymmetrical boat is a good way, a good symbol to say, okay, we can think out of the box, we can find new solutions, and we can make things that are really incredible with students, with industrial partners. And yeah, it's working quite well. I don't know if you want to see a small video of last Friday. So we're going to Monaco in 2 days, and it's working quite well right now. So how do I share the screen? So this is the one. Yeah, it's really quick, but it's going quite well in bumpy conditions. So on the tender, it's pure hell. You're all wet. It's really not nice. But on a foiling boat, it's so natural. So yeah, the three main advantages are, of course, efficiency, comfort. In my mind, is a good second, and then there is speed as well.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry, technologically, we're a little bit challenged here, which is strange because Foiling Week's pretty techie. But thank you for that. And I just want to do a quick introduction. Francis, you have your mute on, but I'm going to introduce Francis Huber. Maybe you can take your mute off.
Hello, Chris.
Awesome. Ciao from Caponetto Huber. Sorry for we had, again, technological issues getting Francis in from Caponetto Huber. Francis is very much a specialty foil designer, but as a designer and engineer, he very much uses CFD, computational fluid dynamics, at a very high level. It's something that in this conversation, one of the reasons why we wanted to have Francis here is because not just exposure to the other designers working on very cool projects, but to have Juliette here and have her exposed to people who are so practiced in the tools that you may or may not be using in your project. It's really important to open up some eyes, just like what Robin, you were saying about, the Swiss Solar Boat isn't just about building a boat. It's more about getting exposure to the students to such high level design and engineering work. So welcome, Francis.
Thanks.
Now, I want to share something really quick because we're going to get into the weeds a little bit. And Francis, I also, if you have any questions at the beginning of this, we said that this is a collaborative talk. So if you have questions about the projects, technically or otherwise, throw out the question. Well, we're happy to hear. So on the Swiss Solar Boat Challenge, let's get into the details of these boats and the construction and why some of these decisions are made. And I really want to learn what the biggest hurdle is for some of these projects. And we'll leave money out of the equation because we're dreamers. at first, like Hubert was saying about the heart. On the Swiss solar boat, my question is this: to use an asymmetrical design, like a proa design, we had what's his name, Paul. Oh my God, he was from the world speed record. So Vestas sail rocket. I'll get his last name in a second.
Larson.
Anyway, yeah, Paul Larson. Thank you. See, everybody knows each other. Paul Larson was exploring and helping out a project that had to do with a large transport proa that was an energy farming idea for transatlantic transport, cargo and people. And the idea was that the boat would shunt. I love using that term, to change directions under sail, because it always had to have the AMA on the leeward side. Couldn't have the AMA on the weather side in that particular proa. So interesting design solution. Foils were considered to add riding moment. But for the Swiss solar boat, explain to me again why the asymmetrical design was chosen, and what are your biggest stumbling blocks? What are your biggest challenges in terms of making this boat perform the way you want it to perform?
So the asymmetrical design is an impulsion to have more. It's both to have the stability of 2 hulls, but a bit lighter than 2 complete hulls of 7 meters. It's a lot. So we decided to go for asymmetrical design.
There is the weight, but there is also the control, because we can differentiate the different foils. You have the main foil that's carrying the weight mainly and doing the heavy work of choosing the right flight height. And the lateral one is not so much loaded, but it has to act fast because it's controlling all the roll. So you can have an actuator that is very fast, but not so much loaded, so the energy consumption is quite low. So that's very interesting compared to classical catamarans or other things. And then you have the stabilizer, which is mostly self-stable, but we use it as a trim for the pitch of the boat.
Meaning self-stable, like as the nose goes down, it angles down, pulls down the transom, and the boat goes up.
Yeah, sure. You could not actuate it and it would still work, but if you take off at 9 knots flat, then if you go up to 30 knots, which we haven't done yet, but we hope, you will have the nose in the water. Basically, you would have 9 degrees pitch down, so 1 meter small boat, and yeah, that's so good.
Gotcha. And those are some really logical design choices. Luke, we saw what your craft looks like. What are some of your biggest hurdles for you right now in terms of the components of creating a boat like yours? Is it one area that's the biggest challenge? Whether it be hydrofoils, weight, propulsion. Is there one that's really standing out as, if you had to add a percentage to it, had the highest percentage of challenge?
I think the weight is really important because it's a loop, virtuous or vicious loop you can enter in, and actually the role of security organization classification organism is quite tricky there, because they may not fully understand the implication of that. And it's quite difficult to deal with all these new topics. And we bring hydrogen on board also, so there is a lot of fear about this hydrogen.
But hydrogen is a fuel source.
Yes.
Yeah.
Luke is the double whammy.
And actually, we use hydrogen for the last 100 years, so it's something known and we know how to deal with. but never on a boat. So these people discovering that, and there is a lot of education that we have to do with them together, so that we don't end up in something that is too heavy, and then we lose all the efficiency that we target. At the end, it
what type
will
of
fly.
range are you aiming for, Luke? What type of range are you aiming for?
The distance, you mean, or?
Yes.
Yeah, we are aiming for 17 nautical miles for the small one, and for the big one also 90 nautical miles.
Yeah.
So there, it's all a matter of optimization of weights, optimization of the foils, sometimes it's difficult to get what the engineer wants through the security guys, and that's actually right now quite a struggle, but I'm pretty sure we'll find a way.
Yeah, and so let's build upon that with some of the struggles with Eldorado. I mean, it's one thing to make a beautiful structure, or at least draw a beautiful structure.
Sure.
But are you running into the same big challenges that Luke is?
Well, from a regulatory perspective, it's not such a challenge, I think, because if you're starting to move a lot of people, you get into a whole different regime.
Of certification.
Exactly. So I think our struggles have mostly been around actually what we refer to as ACS, the automatic control system. So where on a moth you have the sort of the feeler for the height and the human being for the roll and trim, and but whereas we are offering a completely it's a robot basically.
Yeah, autonomous.
Yeah, and so it's not autonomous in the sense that it's steering itself, but it's you just have two input devices, which is the throttle and the steering. And the computer figures out the rest, and so we've been going through lots and lots of iterations with regard to the ACS, and it's still ongoing. Actually, there's sort of a limitless. There's no ceiling on how much you can improve almost, but that is a very exciting journey. Also, just lots of mechanical problems, actually. I mean, if you build a prototype and you put it in the water, things break, and you have to be prepared to endure that pain. It's just the way it is.
And I like that that discussion that Luke brought up too when we were talking about this weight savings and strength.
Yes,
it's all the trade-offs that everyone's getting into in any craft, but really in foiling it gets a lot more critical. For the Swiss solar boat, lightness, and just like Luke was talking about, allows you to go further, use less energy, those kind of challenges. And then also driving decisions in terms of on Luke's project and Gutter's project is, the engine. It's a big weight in the boat. I know that we have a fuel cell on our boat for backup energy. So we have an eFoiling methanol fuel cell. I believe eFoiling also offers hydrogen fuel cells as generators. And so it's fast. It was a lighter solution for us than a hydro generator that only works when you're moving, or the cost of adding solar panels. The amount of methanol used is very little for our needs. So those design decisions, as far as energy is concerned, and then having pushback, like Luke was talking about, makes it even harder. Francis, I wanted to ask you, you look at you don't know everything about these three projects and these three boats that are in process right now, but from a designer's standpoint and from a research, like analysis standpoint, using CFD modeling and other tools, I'd look to someone like you and think, hey, these solutions should be easy, but why are they still so hard when you have all these computational tools that you use to answer all these questions?
Yeah, he did unmute himself.
Hold on, Francis. Hold on. Hold on.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
You are unmuted, but somehow there's no volume. Edit mic settings somehow, maybe.
So, can you hear us? Can you hear us? No? Okay. Hold on. Give us 1 second.
Oh, he's out.
Okay, good. Yeah, he's going to go out and come back in, and that usually helps. The great thing, Hubert, is Francis has worked on the America's Cup and a lot of high-end manufacturing projects and other design projects. So when we have someone who is strictly on the, design and engineering side at a really high level, it's really helpful to answer certain questions that boil it all down. But while he's coming back in, I wanted to go back to Robin and Juliet. And one thing I want to know is, Juliet, are you paying attention to the design world in not just in the hydrofoil space, but the e-boat, e-motor boating and other areas that are creating things kind of like what you're doing? Or is it really hard enough to focus on your studies and work on this project, and you leave it to your teacher to bring in outside influences?
Yeah, we're mainly trying to focus on our project and our studies. It's already a lot, as you just said, and we count on Robin to bring new ideas and sometimes new teachers that come out and say, "Hey, have you seen this project is amazing? Do you think of this?" And we have partners just as Zest or others that come and bring out new ideas, and it's so interesting to talk with them about all this new design, other design. But on our side, of student side, it's already a lot to think about.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. But it is awesome to have partners like Zest. And I'm sure Robin's very careful about what dye he drops into the ocean at school to see how he influences you in the project so you don't get sidetracked.
Yeah, and there are tons of ideas. There are bright people, but very busy with all their courses and exams to take. And yeah, it's really refreshing to work with young people.
Fantastic. Now, Francis, can you hear us? And then can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect.
Okay. Hey.
Now, go ahead.
Yeah,
can we back up into the question?
Yes. I mean, about the tools, I think now everybody has the tools available. I mean, it's true that when we started to use CFD instead of experimental or prototyping, I mean, the 20 years ago, there was a lot of issue and it was very complex. Now, I mean, since 2010 in the America's Cup project, we cannot do any experimental work anymore, and we are relying everything on numerical testing. So I don't think the tools are an issue. I think it's very mature now. For sure, you need the expertise to use the tools, but when you were referring to a lot of problems developing foiling boats, I mean, maybe it's because it's our specialty, but I don't think there are so many because, I mean, the industry started to be very mature. When we did the first prototype in 2017 for the startup Sea Bubble, we did the project in a couple of months. It's true that we are bringing with us a lot of expertise from America's Cup and guys, and so I think what's hard for the company developing their own boat is trying to do everything on their own. It's very hard because, as we were saying before, flight control system, if you want to start from scratch, flight control system, it's complex. If you build up on the experience or development that have been done in the past, I think it's helping for sure a lot. So I mean, that's also the positioning of our company, is that we don't build or sell boats, but we assist companies and naval architects to develop their boat and their prototype by bringing our expertise.
Awesome. Yeah, and one thing you brought up is, on an individual company,
Yes.
And Zest and Edorado and even Candela, we've had Candela on before, that they are a lot on their own. And in the early days of Foiling Week, when people would present papers on their individual projects, and when we started to get into more recreational but individual companies creating boats, that they would look at it, one would look at one and see a solution that would totally help them out, and another one would look at a solution on someone else's, and they would say, oh that's not going to work. So that's the nice thing about, go ahead, Francis. Yep.
I think what's very complex in the foiling industry is that most of the company doing those boats are in a startup mode, which is great because it has stimulated a lot the R&D and the development. But because of this economical model, they need to develop or prove to the investor that they are developing a lot of technology. And if you want to have all the technology within your company, it's complex. While it's true that in the more traditional shipyard, well, you don't own all the technology and you have your supplier. So I think there is a compromise and also education to be made to the investors that some parts might be very important to have in-house. Some parts, any shipyard is not developing the electronic that's going to go on board. And I fear that this kind of economical model is also pushing a bit too much to have everything under one brand. I don't know, you probably know better than me those topics, but we're working with many startups, and often this having all the technology in-house is very key for the investors.
Yeah, and so Goddard, just like Luke, you do know what the landscape looks like.
Sure.
You are in one ways in a bubble with your project, but you're in other ways you know what's going on around.
Totally, yes.
How does a company like yours, you want to stand out in the marketplace? Mm-hmm. Nothing's for free, but how do you choose where you get your outside help from?
I think what Francis is saying is true but I look at it differently, because I am talking to these investors, and I think it's quite key to have your own IP, intellectual property. I mean, because what else have you got?
Yeah, it's almost compulsory, but it's kind of a curse at the same time.
Yes, of course.
Like what Francis was saying.
but from Francis' perspective, I understand that his viewpoint is very valid as well. Mm-hmm. But we think that in the long term, it's actually vital for us to have our own core, technological core. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I'm not telling any secrets or anything. Like, we chose to focus on our ACS, mm-hmm. and at the moment we're using Torpedo for propulsion. Cool. Because we feel like we cannot win every war, right? So it doesn't make sense to do all of that at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we've been very, very much focused on the ACS, and we think that is part of the experience that we're developing. And but I mean, in the talking points, you made a lot of focus on the sort of the economical side of the innovation that we're in, mm-hmm. And actually, so my feeling is that we're actually that the industry is growing rapidly at this moment, and I'm not worried about that at all. I think it's a very good example of what exponential growth looks like, because in the beginning you have 400% growth of nothing, which is nothing, and it just but 400% on top of 400% on top of 400, and all of a sudden it starts to go vertical. And I think we're really at an inflection point at this moment in time, and so it's very exciting. But investors are looking at, of course, where is this gonna, if this is true, I assume this is true, then where am I gonna end up? So they have to, as an entrepreneur, have to answer that question.
Cool. Now, the wonderful thing about Robin and Juliet's is their design parameters aren't not necessarily beholden to market pressures. Mm-hmm. And I think the question I wanted to ask Luke was, we were talking about IP, which we should have a whole episode on IP and get some IP attorney in to help young designers and people protect their creations and their creativity. But Luke, tell me about the value of partnering and sharing with someone like Swiss Solar Boat.
Yeah, maybe I come back first on what has been said on doing a foiler and how easy it is, and I think
or not.
Yeah, no, but it's pretty easy to make something fly. Then to make it economically viable on the long term, history has shown that it's not easy. There are some foiler already since the 50s that are used for transport, and they have failed in a way because they are too expensive during operation. And now we are talking of going to hydrogen. Hydrogen is much more expensive than diesel, and we have to find ways to lower this cost. And I think really the difficulty there is not having something that flies, it's having something that on the long terms is viable economically with all these green constraints that are coming. Now, coming back to the IP thing, mm-hmm. The thing is, we are participating as a sponsor to Swiss Solar Boats. It's a student project, so we have our engineer that is coaching two engineers at Swiss Solar Boat, but it's their project. So we share our what we think is right. They listen to us, fine. They don't listen to us, is no problem. It's their project. So there, it's again, it's teaching, and we are on the Polytechnical School campus, so we like this. We are coming from this world, so we understand also that we need young engineers. We have a lot of engineers doing their master at Almatech, so we know how it works, and you shouldn't be too careful on the IP. I think the know-how, you have to trust your know-how and go forward with it. I always talk about the adventure that took place in the vertical airplanes, and there were 600 projects 5 years ago. Now there is 2 or 3, and what happens is that you can do something that can fly and go up quite easily, but then really to go through the certification, through all the burden that the real life is there, it's another story. And I think now I'm pretty happy to see a lot of new projects coming up, but you have to face it. There will be a lot of people left on the side of the road, but that's life.
Yeah, and I think the awesome thing is that here at Foiling Week, we see a higher percentage of people still on the road than the ones at the side of the road, which is great. But we see everyone at every level. And I guess the thing I want to end with is Robin's, and thank you all for really spending the time. We talk about this as eFoil influencers, and I guess if I use Luke's analogy, the influencers are the ones that are able to keep going and to adapt and to change their projects until they come to fruition. And then all of a sudden that influences behavior, that changes opinion, those kind of things. Like what you were saying, Francis, about Anders Bringdahl's the bubble boat and that project. That opened up some ideas, and that's really important. So Robin, what I want to end on with you and Juliet is, like Juliet says, I mean, you're school, you just had a whole year of school behind you. You're going to Monaco. You've got a boat you have to deal with, you know. It's a challenge. But how important, Robin, is it that students like Juliet see entrepreneurs like Luke and Goddard and engineers like Francis who have full careers for his whole life in tackling these challenges? How important is it for those students to meet people like this?
I think it's crucial because it's inspiration. It brings the reality into their studies. They have a lot of theoretical courses at EPFL, but having something practical is a big eye-opener and a big reinforcement to courses. They're more awake during the courses because they know it will bring something. And having this industrial network and knowing people and discussing with them, they're already in real life. The big plus is when they have their paper, they're not junior anymore. They're experienced engineers. So yeah, it's vital, and I would say thank you to all of you who share with the students, because it's a big plus. And it helps really.
Awesome. And we've really seen that with this Sumoth challenge and at the evaluations yesterday. And I'm sure it's the same, Robin, you feel this probably with Juliet and fellow students, that at this stage in their academic career, these kind of experiences, these kinds of ground to completion projects, the students wind up talking to the jury, in this case with Sumoth yesterday, as peers, going back and forth, sharing knowledge with each other. I'm sure that's an interesting transition for you, Robin, when you see these students pushing back against you on ideas that you may have, and they might poke some holes in it. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's really cool when they have the sufficient experience to say, okay, I think for this we could do it differently. There is another way, or I don't think it works like that, and it's always very interesting discussions.
Great. And I know a lot has changed, for a lot of people who are currently in the market. We talked about that the other day that Francis mentioned that the CFD technology just wasn't in existence. There was trial and error and tank testing and all this hard testing, and scalable model testing. And you had to learn a different way. Now those tools are normal for Juliet. And so there's a lot of new tricks for old dogs.
Well, the tools are not everything.
Yeah, not always.
No, tools are not everything. What is fundamental is the knowledge behind. I mean, I think we're also at a point where we have to be very careful with all those digital twins and etc. It's very easy to have an answer, but the basics of physics and fundamentals are still very important.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent point.
So I just want to come full circle to the beginning where you set out about the technology push or pull, and Luke has been referring to it as well. I mean, hydrofoils have been around for a long time. So why are we seeing a renaissance of hydrofoils? And so I think it's hydrofoils are not being pushed into this world at the moment. They're being pulled into this world because like any renewable energy carrier, I would call it. So like batteries, hydrofoils don't need batteries, but batteries do need hydrofoils. right? So to make something work with batteries and hydrofoil, but even with with hydrogen, the efficiency gain that you need something that's more efficient.
Oh,
so this is really pulling the hydrofoils into this world. I'm convinced of that.
Cool. Yeah, and that's, you know, analyzing this, I always thought it was weird at Foiling Week when we had BMW here, and you know, I was like, why is there a BMW E3 or E4 whatever that was with a carbon fiber chassis?
Yeah.
And then I looked right next to it, and there was this just big, looked like a big plate of batteries. And then I looked at the Torqeedo motorboat that was sitting right there, and there was a big plate of batteries sitting next to the Torqeedo. It was the same plate of batteries for each vehicle. So I love the interface of these technologies. I love these new projects and the challenges that you guys are bringing on. I'll kind of end with Francis's comment about, you know, let's not, you know, think that the computers are going to make all the decisions for us and answer all these questions for us. The human element is everything. And that's why, you know, we wish you were all here, and we will get you here on the shores of Lake Garda again. And we'll carry on this conversation. We know that Zest will be further along in their project. Juliet, next time when you come here, you're going to be done and dusted onto the next boat, I'm sure. And I'm sure Eduardo is going to be here, and we're going to be ripping around the lake on that.
Totally.
So Robin, Juliet, Luke, Francis, Godere, thank you so much for joining the forum.
Thank you, Chris, for putting it together.
No problem. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for the invitation.
Anytime. Good luck in Monaco. And we're going to be talking about sustainability with a lot of very awesome people, large companies, small companies, and all the different parts of it on how we can influence the rest of the world with all our small and big projects. So thank you again, Foiling Week 2022 and the Foiling Week Forum. We have one more to go today, and then a whole row of them tomorrow. So please keep tuning in. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you in a couple minutes from Lake Garda.